The killer the Bible never forgot. Blood, secrets, and the hidden blade. Imagine a left-handed assassin. A hidden weapon strapped to his thigh, and an escape so audacious it seems straight out of a spy movie. But this isn't fiction. This isn't Hollywood inventing impossible heroes. This is real, recorded 3,000 years ago in the pages of the Book of Judges, chapter 3. This is the story of Ehud, the man who used his own disability as a deadly weapon, who transformed what the world saw as weakness into the perfect tool to liberate an entire nation. For 18 endless years, Israel bled under the cruel rule of Eglon, king of Moab. 18 years paying tributes that crushed families. 18 years watching children grow up without hope, without dignity, without a future. 18 years of daily humiliation, of foreign soldiers patrolling their streets, of ever-heavy taxes sucking the life out of every village, every field, every family. And who was this Eglon? The Bible doesn't spare any details. He was grotesquely obese, a man who literally fattened himself at the expense of others' suffering. While Israelite families starved, he feasted. While fathers toiled to exhaustion to pay impossible taxes, he rested in his luxurious summer palace on the plains of Jericho, sunk into expensive cushions, his fat fingers covered in gold rings, laughing at the misery he caused. But something was about to change. Someone was watching. Someone was meticulously planning. A man named Ehud, son of Gera, of the tribe of Benjamin. And this man had something no one else possessed. He was left-handed in a world where everyone was right-handed. And this seemingly insignificant detail was about to rewrite the history of two nations. Prepare yourself, because this story will show you that the Bible contains narratives more intense, more visceral, more cinematic than most modern thrillers. This is the true story of how a single man with a single hidden blade liberated thousands. How the courage of one became the salvation of many. How 20 centimeters of sharp steel changed the destiny of entire generations. The impossible plan. Ehud was not a man of illusions. He knew exactly what he was facing. Blind courage or justified anger wouldn't suffice. He would need something more, something unexpected, an advantage the palace guards would never consider. And that's when his left-handedness ceased to be a peculiarity and became his most deadly weapon. Think about the context. In the ancient world, being left-handed was rare, almost an anomaly. The overwhelming majority of people were right-handed. Soldiers trained to fight with their right hand from childhood. Swords were carried on the left side of the body to facilitate a quick draw with the right hand. The entire military system, the entire logic of combat revolved around this universal reality, and the palace guards, they knew this pattern better than anyone. When they searched visitors for hidden weapons, where did they look? On the left side of the body, obviously. That's where any normal person would hide a blade. The right side was considered a neutral zone, harmless, devoid of real threat. But Ehud was not just anyone. His dominant hand was his left, which meant that everything about him worked in reverse, inverted, outside the expected pattern. While everyone else would draw a weapon from their left side with their right hand, he could hide it on his right and draw it with his left. And no one would look there. No one would suspect a thing. That was the perfect loophole. So Ehud sought out a trusted blacksmith and commissioned a special weapon in absolute secrecy. Not a common sword, long and too obvious to hide, but a short dagger measuring approximately 40 centimeters in total length. A deadly double-edged blade, sharp as razors, capable of cutting deeply in any direction with brutal ease. The blacksmith worked night after night, hammering the metal until he achieved the perfect balance between lightness and lethality. The weapon needed to be light enough not to suspiciously pull at his tunic, but heavy enough to penetrate deeply in a single decisive blow. When it was ready, Ehud strapped it firmly to his right thigh using strips of sturdy leather. Hidden beneath the wide folds of his traveling tunic, the blade was completely invisible, deadly and perfect. But possessing the weapon was only the first step in a much larger plan. Ehud still needed something essential: direct access to the king. And to achieve this, he would use Eglon's own greed against him. Israel was legally obligated to deliver regular tribute to the king of Moab, payments that maintained the oppressor's parasitic lifestyle. Ehud volunteered to lead the next delegation that would carry this tribute. He would carry gold that gleamed in the sun, heavy silver in leather bags, grain harvested with sweat and blood, everything Eglon demanded. He would present himself as an obedient and humble servant, just another subjugated Israelite fulfilling his degrading obligation. The guards would see him and think, another defeated man bringing the riches that feed our king. They would never have suspected that beneath that simple, dusty tunic, fastened against the right leg of that seemingly harmless man, lay hidden the tool that would liberate an entire enslaved nation. The mortal execution, the decisive moment, finally arrived like an inevitable storm. Ehud and his delegation passed through the massive gates of Eglon's summer palace, an imposing structure that gleamed under the scorching sun. The air inside was thick, almost suffocating, heavy with expensive incense imported from distant lands and the strong smell of abundant food from the royal kitchens. The guards intercepted them immediately, as they always did. It was strict protocol. Rough, efficient hands ran over the body of each visitor. When it was Ehud's turn, the guards methodically felt his left side, checking exactly where a weapon should be hidden according to all known military logic. They found absolutely nothing because there was nothing to find there. Ehud's right thigh, where the deadly dagger rested cold against his skin, protected only by layers of linen, was not even touched by the confident guards. They didn't even consider checking there because it simply made no sense in their world. The tributes were formally delivered in a degrading ceremony. Gold gleamed intensely under the light of the lit torches. Silver clinked heavily in bronze vessels. Sacks of grain were piled at the foot of the throne. Eglon watched everything from his elevated position, his obscene, corpulent mass sunk deep into cushions of imported red and gold silk. Grotesquely fat fingers adorned with heavy rings of solid gold encrusted with rubies and sapphires, an expression of greedy and arrogant satisfaction permanently imprinted on his red and sweaty face. To him, it was just another ordinary day receiving what he considered his divine right. Another public demonstration of his absolute and indisputable power over that pathetic and defeated people. The Israelite delegation was dismissed with the disdainful gesture of the king's fat hand. Ehud began to leave along with the other men in tense silence, walking towards the open gates. But then, when he was already several meters away, he stopped abruptly. He turned slowly, and in a calm, controlled voice, almost casual in its neutral tone, he said something that would change absolutely everything. He told the king he had a secret message, something confidential of utmost importance. A private word straight from God. Eglon's insatiable curiosity was instantly piqued like wildfire. A secret message? Something confidential? A divine revelation? This was extremely intriguing, potentially valuable to his political plans. Certainly something not to be shared in the presence of ordinary ears. The fat king immediately ordered everyone to leave the room. His trained guards, his silent servants, his curious advisors, everyone without exception. He wanted to hear this mysterious message in absolute privacy, alone with that humble, stooped Israelite who certainly posed no real physical threat to a protected king. The heavy cedar doors of the private chamber slammed shut with a deep, final sound, and suddenly there were only two men in a cool, silent room. The obese, satisfied oppressor, and the tense liberator holding his destiny. The king sat comfortably in his cushioned chair, specially built to support his immense weight, sunken luxury accumulated through years of brutal exploitation. And Ehud stood a few paces away, his right hand beginning to move slowly and deliberately toward his hidden thigh. Eglon leaned forward with difficulty, his enormous body protesting the movement, an expectant and curious expression on his sweaty, red face. And Ehud uttered the exact words that would be the last the Moabite king would hear in this life. "I have a word from God for you." In an explosive movement practiced 1,000 times in absolute secrecy during lonely nights, Ehud's left hand plunged swiftly beneath his linen tunic. His fingers found the familiar leather handle. He snatched the sharp, double-edged dagger from his right thigh in a single fluid motion, and buried it with all the force of his tense muscles and 18 years accumulated determination into Eglon's voluminous soft abdomen. The blade penetrated deep into the flaccid flesh, so deeply that it cut through layer upon layer of yellow fat. The detail, which the Bible records with shocking precision, is visceral and disturbing to modern readers. The king's own abundant fat swallowed not only the deadly blade, but also the entire hilt of the weapon. The dagger pierced his obese abdomen completely and exited through his broad back. The fat closed over the entire weapon like water swallowing a stone. Eglon didn't even have time to scream or call for help. His enormous body collapsed instantly, the dead weight falling heavily forward as life abandoned him in brutal seconds, blood silently soaking the expensive silk cushions that supported his throne of oppression. Warning. The impossible escape, absolute silence, heavy as lead, filled the luxurious chamber. The only sound was Ehud's panting breath and the slow dripping of blood onto the silk cushions. Eglon's massive body lay completely still on the cold floor, the dagger still buried so deeply in the abundant fat that it was physically impossible to see or reach to remove it. Ehud didn't even consider trying to retrieve his weapon. Every second was precious beyond measure now. Every movement needed to be absolutely calculated and precise. There was no room for error or hesitation. A single mistake and all would be lost. He forced his tense muscles to relax, his rapid breathing to calm, his panicked mind to focus. He glanced quickly around the room, assessing all possible options. The king's summer chamber had been specifically built with a particular and crucial architectural feature. It was designed to maximize coolness during the scorching summer days in the lower Jericho region, with strategically positioned windows to capture cross breezes and, crucially to Ehud's escape plan, multiple exits including a side passage leading directly to an open outdoor terrace. Ehud moved like a silent shadow despite his heart pounding violently in his chest. He crossed the chamber, avoiding stepping on the blood that slowly spread across the expensive Persian carpets, reached the terrace door, quickly checked that there were no visible guards outside at that particular moment, and stepped out into the warm open air, breathing deeply. Outside on the stone terrace, he executed the most ingenious part of his entire escape plan. He locked the doors behind him from the outside, using the external wooden latch. This seemingly small detail was absolutely crucial and brilliant in its deceptive simplicity. By locking the doors from the outside, he instantly created the perfect impression that the king had locked the doors from the inside, seeking absolute privacy for some delicate matter or personal need. The guards inside the palace would find the doors locked and naturally assume the lock had been placed by the king from the inside to ensure he wouldn't be disturbed. Ehud descended from the terrace using stone side steps, walked through the wide columned corridors trying to maintain a neutral expression and measured steps as if nothing extraordinary had happened past busy servants, who barely glanced at him, crossed inner courtyards with running water fountains, passed through the massive outer gates of the palace where guards on duty saw him leave without any suspicion because he was just another Israelite visitor fulfilling his tribute obligation and departing, and finally disappeared into the rocky and arid landscape of the surrounding hills. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Eglon's personal guards gradually began to grow restless and worried. The king had been locked inside for far too long. Much longer than would be normal even for an important private conversation. But the heavy cedar doors were firmly locked, and there was a very clear and rigid social and cultural protocol for this specific situation. The Bible uses a delicate and respectful euphemism, but the contextual meaning is perfectly clear to any reader of the time. The guards automatically assumed the king was relieving himself, using the private sanitary facilities of his personal chamber for natural bodily needs. And absolutely no one, under any circumstances, would interrupt a king during such an intimate and potentially embarrassing moment. It would be a grave offense against etiquette, a violation of protocol that could result in severe punishment or even immediate execution for anyone who committed such an unforgivable disrespect to royal dignity. So they waited outside the locked doors, and waited some more, and continued waiting, increasingly uncomfortable. The minutes dragged on heavily like endless hours as Ehud gained precious and crucial distance. Each minute of awkward waiting by the guards was another kilometer of advantage for the fleeing assassin. Finally, when the wait became utterly unbearable and the embarrassment evolved into genuine concern for the king's health, the guards made the difficult decision to look for a spare key. They found a master key kept for emergencies. They unlocked the heavy doors with nervous hands. They pushed open the cedar doors, which slowly creaked on their hinges. And they found their king dead, lying on the cold stone floor, surrounded by a growing pool of dark red blood that stained the expensive, Persian carpets, his body already beginning to cool, the undeniable and shocking evidence of a perfectly executed murder right under their supposedly vigilant noses. Absolute panic exploded like a bomb. Cries of horror and alarm echoed through the stone corridors. Soldiers ran in all directions without coordination, but it was too late. Much too late. Ehud had crossed the rugged region of the carved quarries near. Gilgal reached the protected and familiar mountains of Ephraim, where he knew every trail and every hiding place and was now safe among his own people, who had welcomed him as a liberating hero. He sounded the shofar, the curved ram's horn that produced a long, deep sound echoing through the mountains, summoning the able-bodied men of Israel to the long-awaited battle. And, as they gathered by the thousands, bringing whatever weapons they possessed, Ehud proclaimed in a strong, confident voice that the Lord had delivered their oppressive enemies directly into their hands. The shocking news of Eglon's violent death spread like wildfire throughout the territory. Without their authoritarian king, without clear military leadership or an established line of succession, the Moabites quickly descended into disorganization and widespread panic. Israel decisively attacked, taking advantage of the chaos, strategically seizing all the fords of the Jordan River to completely prevent Moabite escape or reinforcements, and on that bloody day killed approximately 10,000 enemy soldiers in battles along the riverbanks. Not a single Moabite soldier managed to escape alive back to his territory.